start every morning by looking myself in the eye. Not metaphorically, literally. I stand in front of the bathroom mirror, lean on the sink a little more than I used to, and I look at the woman staring back at me. Wrinkles everywhere now. Neck, forehead, around the mouth. My eyebrows aren't sisters anymore. They're two tired neighbors who wave from porch to porch. But my eyes are still clear. Brown, sharp, and very much alive. Still here, I tell my reflection, and nobody is taking this house from me. I say that part out loud, because that is the battle these days. Not my cholesterol, not my knees, not my loneliness. My battle is my own son. If my husband were still alive, this would be different. Frank would have taken one look at our son, at his slick little schemes and opportunities, and put him right back on the tracks before he even thought about stepping off. But Frank's been gone 8 years now. Massive heart attack in the produce aisle at Publix. One second he was arguing with me about cabbage. The next second, I was holding his hand on the floor, listening to some teenager call 911. So now it's just me in the house. 3 bedrooms in a quiet Florida suburb. Paid off. Yellow siding, a front porch I insisted on, wind chimes Frank hated, oak tree in the front yard that drops leaves like it's trying to prove a point, and my son, who keeps circling like a vulture that thinks I don't notice it's a vulture. Mom, you're just sitting on that equity. Mom, you could have such a better life. Travel a little, relax. Mom, you know what a reverse mortgage is? It's not what you think. Every one of those conversations ended the same way. Michael, I am not putting my home up as collateral for anything. Not for you, not for anyone. This is my house. I buried your father while this roof was over my head, and this is where I'll die. End of discussion. He'd sigh, do that annoyed little laugh of his, and then launch into a whole speech about good debt and investing in yourself. And then lately, the tone shifted. Less about me relaxing, more about him needing just a little help to get back on track. Most of our fights happened over the phone. That made it worse somehow. I couldn't see his face. I just heard the impatience, the entitlement, the way he treated my refusal like I was being unreasonable. The last time he raised his voice, actually raised his voice at me. You just don't get it, Mom. I am drowning here. People are counting on me. I'm not asking you to give it away. I'm asking you to leverage it. It's numbers on a piece of paper. You're being stubborn. Good. I'd rather be stubborn than stupid. He hung up on me. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. I put it face down on the table, turned off the ringer, and I made a decision. I was done arguing, so I stopped picking up. One day turned into two into 3, and before I knew it, I'd ignored his calls for a week. He left voicemails, some angry, some wheedling, one where he tried to sound casual, like he hadn't spent the last month pushing me to gamble my house. I didn't listen to all of them, just enough to get the tone. Then I deleted them. That was the week my routine became more important than ever. Every morning, wake up, talk to the mirror, make my coffee, stretch my hip until it stops complaining, lace up my sneakers, and head to the park. Movement is life, my doctor said. You want that knee replacement to stay theoretical? Walk. So I walk. Same route, same park, same birds, same older couple doing Tai Chi on the little hill, same teenager jogging with headphones so loud I can hear his music from a bench away. And on my way back, same man near the bridge, Jeff. I don't remember the first day I gave him $1. I remember the first day I noticed him, though. He was sitting on the ground, back against the concrete support of the bridge, arms wrapped around his knees, eyes closed. No sign, no panhandling, no God bless, no anything. Just there. His clothes were stained, but not filthy. His hair a mix of gray and brown. Beard short, but uneven. There was a backpack beside him, and a milk crate turned upside down next to that. He looked like he was trying very hard not to exist. I walked by, and my chest hurt in that particular way it does when you see something you know is unfair, but you also know you can't fix. The next day, he was there again. This time, he was up on his feet talking to a guy in a pickup truck. They were loading bags of mulch into the bed.
The guy handed him some cash, and Jeff nodded like they'd just made a deal equal on both sides. After the truck left, Jeff sat back down. I don't plan these things. I'm not some saint. But when I passed him, I stopped. "Morning," I said. He looked up, a little startled. His eyes were blue. Bright blue. That surprised me. "Morning, ma'am." I pulled $1 out of the zippered pocket in my walking shorts and held it out. He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I just got paid. I'm good." "That's nice," I said. "Take it anyway, so I feel better." He hesitated, then took it, like he didn't want to insult me by refusing. "Thank you," he said. "I'm Jeff. I'm Linda." That's how it started. $1, a name, and a tiny bit of dignity on both sides. It became a little tradition. I'd walk, I'd count my steps on my phone like some kind of 60-year-old influencer without the audience, and on my way back, I'd stop and hand Jeff $1. Not enough to change his life, not enough to make me feel smug, just a ritual. After a while, we started talking. Nothing deep at first, just the weather, how hot it was getting, how cold the shade felt under the bridge. He told me sometimes people hired him for odd jobs, loading, moving, yard work. He'd sleep under the bridge or at the shelter if there was space. I started timing my walks so I'd catch him when he was there. It's funny how your life can be a string of ordinary moments, and you don't realize which one is the wire trip until afterwards. A couple of months before everything happened, I'd shown him a picture of my son. We were talking about kids. He asked if I had any. "One," I said, pulling out my phone. "This is Michael," when he was still talking to me like I was his mother and not his personal ATM. In the photo, Michael was standing with his arm around me at Frank's headstone. It was the last Mother's Day where things still felt salvageable. His hair was shorter then, his face fuller, before the worry and whatever he was doing to himself hollowed him out. Jeff squinted at the screen. "He looks like you," he said. I snorted. He'd be insulted to hear that. Jeff smiled. "Nice smile, though." "Yeah," I said. And then I put the phone away and changed the subject because even back then, thinking about Michael made my throat tight. So when Jeff stopped me that morning, really stopped me, not just nodded like he usually did, I knew something was wrong. It was one of those mornings where the sky is too blue, the type of day you'd see in a commercial for allergy medicine. My knee felt decent, my hip was only at a dull grumble, I'd done my loop, admired the ducks, mentally judged 3 different people's choices in sneakers, and I was headed home, already thinking about what sandwich I'd make for lunch. Jeff wasn't in his usual spot by the bridge. Instead, I saw him walking toward me. Fast, his backpack bouncing against his shoulder, his face tight. Ma'am, could you hold up a second?" That alone was odd. Jeff never hurried. He moved like the day was something he had to get through, not something he could influence. I slowed down. "Morning, Jeff." He reached me and stopped, slightly out of breath. Up close, I could see he hadn't shaved in a few days, and there was a twitch in his jaw. "Ma'am, please don't go home right now." It wasn't the words that scared me. It was his voice. It was the way he said it, gripped with something like panic and care at the same time. My hand went automatically to the little zippered pocket in my walking shorts and held it out. He shook his head. No, ma'am, this isn't about that. Please, don't go home right now." A cold little coin dropped into my stomach. "Why?" I asked. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, like he was trying to decide if he should say it and had already decided, but his body hadn't caught up. I happened to overhear a conversation down by that coffee shop on Maple. You know the one with the blue umbrellas? I nodded. I did. There's a back patio. The servers cut through the alley sometimes. I was, back there, hoping for a dishwashing gig, and I heard this guy talking on the phone, loud. He hesitated. And, ma'am, I swear it was your son. I actually laughed. A short, sharp bark. My son? Michael? He nodded vigorously. Yes, ma'am, I recognized him. You showed me a picture, remember? And the way he walks, kind of fast, like he's late even when he's not. My laugh died in my throat. Jeff's eyes were steady on mine. He was mad, Jeff said quietly, talking about how people were pressing him for money he didn't have.
Creditors? He kept saying they were breathing down his neck, said he needed a way out, some insurance money. He said, Jeff swallowed, he said something about his mom's house, about you. He said you wouldn't sign anything, but he could work around that. I stood absolutely still, the world narrowing to his voice and the sound of blood pounding in my ears. He said he couldn't convince you to do it the easy way, Jeff went on. So he was talking about insurance and something happening to the house while you were out on your walk. He used those words, while she's out on her walk. He forced himself to meet my eyes. Mom, I didn't want to believe he meant what it sounded like, but the way he said it, and the way he laughed, my legs started to go, and I locked my knees so I didn't sink down on the pavement. No. There had to be another explanation. My son might be stubborn. He might be a manipulative little salesman when he wanted something. He might be financially stupid and morally flexible, but arson? Planning something to happen to my house? Jeff. My voice shook. I cleared my throat. People talk. Maybe he was bragging or just venting. Jeff shook his head, eyes fierce. No, ma'am, I know talk. I've heard people run their mouths my whole life. This wasn't that. He said, his voice dropped low, almost like he was ashamed to repeat it. He said, she's practically dead already. She just doesn't know it. The house is more use than she is. I couldn't breathe. The air turned thick, like I was trying to inhale swamp water. My son would never. I started, and then I stopped, because a very quiet, very honest part of me said, wouldn't he? This is the same son who had no problem asking you to risk everything you have after you buried his father. The same son who called you stubborn and laughed at you for wanting security instead of leverage. The same son whose calls you've been avoiding because you were scared of what he'd say next. Jeff saw the war happening on my face. I'm not asking you to take my word for it, he said. I'm asking you not to go home yet. Just don't walk straight in. Walk around the block. Wait. Watch. See if anything looks off. Please. Why would he... My mouth was dry. Insurance? That's insane. They investigate. He'd get caught. People do dumb things when they're desperate. I've done them. I've watched other people do worse. I thought of Michael's last voicemail. I hadn't listened to all of it. The snippet I heard was him saying, I can't keep stalling these guys. A buzzing started in my hands. My fingers tingled. What time did you hear him? I asked. Jeff scratched his cheek. Maybe an hour ago? I walked fast to try to catch you. I was afraid I'd miss you. I glanced at my watch. 9:40 a.m. I usually got home around 10:15. If someone wanted to time something with my routine, they'd pick this window. Okay, I said. My voice sounded small to my own ears. Okay, I'll walk around, just to be sure. Jeff nodded, relief sagging his shoulders. Thank you, ma'am. If it turns out I'm wrong, I'll be the happiest idiot on this bridge. I forced a smile that felt like a crack in my face. Stay here, I said. I might need you later. His eyebrows twitched. Yes, ma'am. I turned and walked, not my usual route this time. I cut through the side streets, the quiet little slices of suburbia where everyone's lawn looks like it's on a prescription. As I walked, everything Jeff said rolled through my head, over and over, blending with years of conversations with Michael. Just a signature, Mom. Seriously, nobody's coming for your house. I know a guy who can handle everything. It's just paperwork. Why do you always assume the worst of me? Did I? Had I? Or did I ignore my gut feeling because it was easier to believe my son would never truly put me in harm's way? My house appeared at the end of the block like it always did. Yellow siding, oak tree, wind chimes tinkling lazily. Nothing strange. No smoke, no strange cars in the driveway. I stopped at the corner, half a block away, where the neighbor's hedge gave me a partial view without exposing me, and I waited. My heart thudded behind my ribs. My hands were trembling so much I had to tuck them under my arms. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Nothing. Just the mail truck rolling past, Mrs. Ramirez from across the street dragging her trash can back up her driveway, a dog barking 3 houses down. I started to feel foolish. Of course. It was nothing. I was letting some overheard conversation and a homeless man's fear work me up. How ridiculous. I could go home, call Michael, yell at him for making me think. A white van turned onto my street. Unmarked. Clean. Not a beat-up construction van, not a delivery van with logos, just white. The kind you rent for a move or a job. It drove slowly, past my house, then reversed and stopped right in front of it. My breath hitched. The driver got out. He wore a brown polo shirt and a cap with a generic shipping logo on it. Sunglasses. His posture was hunched, like he was trying hard not to be seen and also trying hard to look like he didn't care. From this distance, I couldn't see his face clearly, but there was something about the shape of his shoulders, the way he moved, quick, agitated, that tugged at my memory. My stomach turned over. He went to the passenger side, pulled out a cardboard box the size of a microwave, and carried it up to my front door. He set it down carefully, glanced around once, then jogged back to the van. The van drove off. I might have talked myself out of everything right then, convinced myself it was just a misdelivered package, some neighbor's order. Except I knew what I had and hadn't ordered. I did not have anything coming that required a plain white van and a fake-looking uniform. The box sat there on my doormat, innocent and brown. The sun hit it, warming the cardboard. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. I started to feel the foolishness creep back in. Maybe I'd gotten paranoid and scared over a coincidence and a story. Maybe the box caught fire. No buildup. No slow little tendril of smoke. 1 second, it was a box. The next second, there was a whoosh, and flames were licking up the sides like someone had poured lighter fluid inside and lit a match. I gasped, a sound that ripped into the morning air. The flames shot higher, orange and hungry. The heat shimmered across the distance between us. The edge of my welcome mat blackened. If I had been home, I would have opened the door. There's no world where I wouldn't have opened the door to a box on my porch. And if I'd opened the door to something like that, I didn't let my mind finish the picture. I pulled my phone out with fingers that felt like rubber and punched in 911. My voice shook, but it worked. "There's a fire," I told the dispatcher. Gave my address. It's a package on my front porch. It's burning really fast." The dispatcher asked me questions. I answered on autopilot, my eyes glued to my front door where the flames were starting to curl up the wood, painting it black. By the time the fire truck rounded the corner, lights flashing, my neighbors were out on their lawns, hands over their mouths, looking from the smoke to me and back again. The firefighters moved with quick, calm efficiency. Hose, foam, commands. They got the fire out before it spread past the door. The front of my house looked like it had been kissed by something that hated it. Part of the door was charred, black and bubbling. The siding above it had melted in ugly streaks. The welcome mat was gone. Nothing but a sodden black smear. The box was no longer a box. Just a pile of wet, burnt cardboard and something inside that had warped into an unrecognizable shape. A firefighter came over, his gear still steaming. He pulled off his helmet. "Ma'am, are you the homeowner?" I nodded. My vocal cords apparently were still on break. "You're lucky," he said. "Whatever was in there burned hot and fast. Another 10 minutes, we would have been dealing with a full structure fire." "Can you tell what started it?" I forced out. He glanced back at the mess. "Hard to say yet. Could be some kind of chemical accelerant. Definitely not a normal package that caught by accident." He looked back at me. "You expecting anything delivered?" I shook my head. "No, nothing." His mouth tightened. "Okay, we're gonna call this into PD, ma'am. This looks suspicious." Suspicious. That was one word for it. I glanced up and caught myself reflected faintly in my own front window. I looked small. My hair was mashed down with sweat from my walk, my t-shirt was stained from where I'd clutched the phone too hard, and my hands were still shaking. Behind that glass was my living room, Frank's recliner, the quilt I'd sewn when I was pregnant with Michael, the photo albums, the wide, quiet hallway where I'd walked back and forth the night after Frank died because I didn't know what else to do. My house. Something hot and furious began spreading in my chest, burning away some of the shock. Someone had tried to burn my house. Someone who knew my routine. Someone who knew I'd be walking at that time.
Someone who knew exactly what I refused to do with my house. A police cruiser pulled up. An officer walked over and started asking questions. "Where were you? Did you see anything? Any strangers in the neighborhood? Any issues with anyone who might want to hurt you?" I answered as best I could. "I was on my walk. A friend told me something felt wrong, so I waited before coming home. I saw a van drop the package off." "What kind of van?" he asked, pen poised. "White," I said. "No markings. The man, he had a brown polo on." "Did you see his face?" "Not clearly," I said slowly. "But his build, his walk." I swallowed hard. The officer watched me closely. "Ma'am?" He had kind eyes, young but not too young. "I think I know who it was," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's. "Okay," he said calmly. "Who do you think it was?" I hesitated. I could say it. I could say my son's name. I could watch the pen write it down. I could let this whole thing move into a system that would chew him up in a different way than his creditors. Or I could wait. I'm not sure yet," I said finally. "I need to talk to someone first, but I can tell you this. I did not order anything, and whoever dropped that off timed it for when I'm always gone." The officer's jaw tightened. "We're going to take this seriously, ma'am. If you remember anything else, you call us, okay?" I nodded. They took photos, they collected the melted remains of the box and whatever had been inside. They talked quietly among themselves. Neighbors drifted over with concerned faces and helpful gossip. "I saw a van like that last week," one said, even though I'd never seen her so much as smile at me before. "Must have been those teenagers," another muttered, because apparently everything bad that happens in a neighborhood is automatically the fault of those teenagers. I answered questions, thanked people, and all the while, one thought kept flashing through my mind like a neon sign. Jeff. I waited until the firefighters wrapped up and the police finished their initial sweep. Then I went back to the park. Jeff was sitting on his milk crate under the bridge, elbows on his knees, hands steepled in front of his mouth. When he saw me, he stood up so fast the crate toppled over. "Ma'am, oh God, are you okay?" His eyes flicked over me, scanning for burns. "Physically, yes," I said. My voice was steadier now. It had settled into something cold. "You were right." He closed his eyes briefly, like he'd been hoping I'd walk up and tell him it had all been a ridiculous misunderstanding. "What happened?" I told him about the van, the package, the fire. About the way the firefighters said chemical accelerant in that grounded tone of his. About the way the flames had eaten the box in minutes. Jeff listened, jaw clenched, hands stuffed into his pockets. When I was done, he said, "I am so sorry, ma'am. You have nothing to be sorry for. You may have saved my life." He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with praise. "I need you to tell me exactly what you heard, every word you remember." We walked to a picnic table a little away from the bridge. I bought us both bottled water from the vending machine. My hands had stopped shaking, but there was a tightness behind my eyes that let me know if I wasn't careful, I'd start crying and not stop. We sat. Jeff took a long drink, then set the bottle down carefully, like he was afraid to spill. It was about 8:30, maybe a little later. I was behind the coffee shop. They sometimes let me wash dishes if someone calls out. I was sitting by the dumpster, and he walked out on the patio, talking on his phone. He didn't see me. "Michael," I said. Naming it made my stomach lurch. "Michael," Jeff confirmed. "He was saying he couldn't get you to agree to sign anything, that you're old school and paranoid, that you wouldn't use the house as collateral for a loan." He glanced at me. He mentioned the word equity a lot. My jaw clenched. He said something about these guys he owes money to, that they're not patient people. He said if he doesn't pay them back soon, he's dead. Those are his words, ma'am, not mine. A cold sweat broke out across my back. "He said," Jeff went on, voice low, "the house is insured really well, that he's already checked. Said something about replacement cost and no questions asked if it looks accidental." He laughed when he said that. That's when my stomach went weird. Jeff's fingers tightened around the bottle. Then he said, "She takes that stupid walk every morning."
If something happened while she's gone, nobody would get hurt, and I'd be able to pay everyone back. "Nobody would get hurt," I repeated. "Except my home. Except everything I have in this world." "I know it doesn't sound like much coming from me," Jeff said slowly. "But I've seen people rationalize a lot of bad things by saying nobody will get hurt." I believed him. I didn't want to. I would have loved a world where this was all some terrible misunderstanding, where my son was just mouthing off to someone on the phone. But there was a scorched front door and melted siding waiting for me back home that said otherwise. "Did he say anything that would prove it was him?" I asked, practical now. "Anything specific? Something the police could use?" Jeff rubbed his face. "He said your name, once. Linda is impossible. He said you're his mother. Said she's supposed to want to help me, not sabotage me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Sounds like him," I said. "He also said the street name, not the number, but he said over on Hawthorne. And I knew that's where you said you live. Evidence. Not enough to put him away forever, but enough to start a serious conversation." I thanked Jeff again. This time, I pulled more than $1 from my pocket. A 20, folded and pressed into his hand. He started to protest. "No," I said firmly. "You did me a kindness. I'm not paying you for it. I'm thanking you for it. Take it." He swallowed and nodded. "Jeff?" "Yes, ma'am?" "Are you willing to tell the police what you told me?" He froze. "I know they might not take you seriously," I added. "That's the truth of it. But I need to know if you'd be willing, because if I decide to go that route, I'll need you." He looked down at the 20, then back at me. "People like me don't usually get believed, not over people like your son." "I know," I said, "but I believe you, and I'm not people like your son." That made him smile, briefly. Yeah, I'll tell them. If you need me to, I will." We exchanged phone numbers, which turned into an entire little saga because Jeff didn't have a phone. "Okay," I said, "then here's what we're going to do. You stick to the park for the next couple of days if you can. I'll come find you. If you need to reach me right away, you go to that coffee shop, ask them to call this number, and tell them it's urgent." I wrote my phone number on the back of his hand with the pen I kept in my fanny pack. I'm old, of course I have a pen in there. Then I went home. The smell hit me before I reached the door. That sickly, chemical burn smell layered over soaked ash. It clung to the air, moved into my hair, settled into my clothes. The police had taped off the area around the door with yellow tape. My porch looked like a crime scene from a TV show. I stood there, staring at the blackened wood, and something inside me went very, very still. This was my line. You hear women my age talk about being pushed too far. Usually it's about a husband snoring or socks on the floor. This was not that. My son had decided one way or another that my home was worth more to him burned than standing. Maybe he told himself he'd make sure I was safe. Maybe he told himself I'd be grateful when he rescued me with insurance money. I didn't care what story he told himself. He'd crossed a line you don't come back from without scars. Inside, the house was fine. A little smoky smelling, but the fire hadn't reached that far. The firefighters had kept it from getting inside. I walked through every room, touching furniture, walls, photographs, like I was reassuring myself it was all still there. In the hallway, I stopped at the photo of Michael at 5 years old. He was on the beach, holding a plastic shovel, grinning up at the camera, cheeks covered in ice cream. Frank's hand was in the corner of the frame, steadying him. My throat closed. What had happened between that little boy and the man in my memory who laughed about insurance? Some of it I knew. Michael was always smart, slick smart. He could talk his teachers into extra credit, talk his way out of trouble, talk us into letting him stay out past curfew. Frank used to say, "That boy could sell an empty box if you put a bow on it." But where I heard a warning, Michael heard potential. He went into sales right out of college. Then he got into consulting, which, near as I could tell, meant telling people what they wanted to hear and taking a percentage. Then came the investments, startups, crypto, real estate opportunities. Every time there was a pitch. "Mom, this is going to be huge. Mom, you don't understand. This is the future." We helped him a few times in the early days. A loan here, a car payment there. Then the numbers got bigger. Frank said no, firmly. "We're not bailing him out of stupidity," he told me. We fought about that, quietly, in our bedroom, voices low so Michael wouldn't hear. I wanted to help our son. Frank wanted to help him be a man. Frank died before he had to watch it all get worse. I stood in the hallway, staring at the 5-year-old version of my son, and I made a decision. I was not going to the police. Not yet. Instead, I was going to go to my son, and he was going to have a choice. His apartment was across town in one of those complexes with names like the Arbors or the Palms that try very hard to sound upscale and end up sounding like a dental practice. I drove over just after lunch. The sky had started to haze over, heat turning the air into something heavy and sticky. I sat in my car for a minute outside his building, the air conditioning humming, my hands on the steering wheel. I could still smell smoke in my hair. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Michael, Mom, we need to talk. This is getting ridiculous. I don't know what's going on with you, but ignoring me isn't going to fix anything." I stared at the screen. Then I turned the car off, grabbed my purse, and headed inside. He answered the door half a minute after I knocked. If I hadn't been so angry, I might have cried just seeing him. He looked bad, thinner than the last time I'd seen him up close, dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw like he'd forgotten to shave for a few days. His hair needed a cut. "Mom," he said, surprise flashing across his face. "I was just about to call me," I said. "Yes, I got your text." He stepped back to let me in. The apartment was a mess. Not disgusting, but cluttered. Papers on the coffee table, a pizza box on the counter, 3 empty energy drink cans lined up like little soldiers. I noticed the white baseball cap with the generic shipping logo sitting on the arm of the couch. Something in my chest went ice cold. I walked over and picked it up with 2 fingers, turning it slowly. Michael swallowed. "Where'd you get this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Promo thing. One of my clients." "Which client uses plain white Vans and brown polos?" He winced. What are you talking about? I set the cap back down, very carefully. Michael, I said. Someone tried to burn my house down this morning. The blood drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What? He croaked. I didn't blink. A package was delivered to my front door while I was on my walk, I said, voice even. It caught fire. Chemical accelerant, they said. The fire department got there in time. My front door is scorched, but the house is standing. His hands started to shake. That's horrible, he said. Are you okay? Why didn't you call me? Because I've spent the last hour deciding whether to call the police instead, I said. His eyes flew to mine. What? Why would you? Because, Michael, I said, someone who looks a lot like you, wearing a cap that looks a lot like this, was seen dropping off that package. He swallowed so hard I heard it. That's crazy, he said. Who said that? Who's accusing me of that? A man who overheard you this morning talking on the phone about your debts, about insurance, about my house, about something happening while I was on my walk. His mouth opened again, but no sound came out. If you're going to lie, I said softly, take a second and pick a good one. Because right now all I see when I look at you is a little boy caught with matches behind the garage. He sank down onto the couch like his legs had given up. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the cheap wall clock and our breathing. Then he laughed. It was ugly. Short. A bark of disbelief turned inward. This is insane, he said weakly. You really think I would? He looked at me, really looked at me, and saw the answer on my face. Something in him broke. He dropped his head into his hands. I wasn't going to let you get hurt, he muttered. You weren't supposed to be there. Comforting. So it's attempted arson with premeditation, but the good news is you checked my schedule. He flinched, like I slapped him. Mom, you don't understand, he said, looking up.
His eyes were wild. I'm in trouble, real trouble. These people, they're not banks. They're not going to just send letters. If I don't pay them back, they'll hurt you, I finished. So you thought you'd hurt me first. No, he said, appalled. No, I would never hurt you. You already did, I said quietly. We stared at each other. I'm drowning, he whispered. I am. I thought if I could just wipe the slate clean, I could start over, pay everyone back, get on track. The house is insured, you'd get everything replaced, and you'd have money left over. I wasn't trying to steal from you. I was trying to, I was trying to fix it. You were trying to clean up one mess by making a bigger one, I said, by risking the only stability I have, the last thing your father worked his whole life for. He covered his face again. How did you get the accelerant? I asked. No, never mind. I don't want to know the details. He stayed silent. I took a deep breath. The smoke smell had followed me like a ghost. Here's where we are, Michael, I said. Legally speaking, I should have called the police the second I knew it was you. I still can. I have a witness who overheard you planning it. I have firefighters who can testify that the fire was not accidental. I have neighbors who saw a white van. He squeezed his eyes shut. I could put you in a lot of trouble, I said. Jail trouble, felony record trouble, insurance fraud, attempted arson, maybe even attempted something worse if they decide I could have been home. I don't know all the charges, but I know they'd add up. My hands were shaking again, but my voice stayed level. Or, I said, I can give you one other option. His head snapped up. Anything, he said hoarsely. Mom, please, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I'll fix it. You're not talking your way out of this, I cut in.
This isn't some bank you can charm or some investor you can smooth talk. This is me, and this is your life. I sat down in the armchair across from him. My knees cracked as I did. He flinched at the sound. It made him look suddenly much younger. The other option is this, Michael, I said. You take the job I choose for you. You show up, you stay, you do the work. You let me control your finances until every penny you owe is paid back. You go to therapy. You go to whatever support group applies to whatever mess you've gotten yourself into. Gambling, compulsive risk-taking, I don't care what they call it, but you go. And you understand that the second you step out of line, the second you skip work or put so much as a toe back into your old life, I go straight to the police with everything I have. He stared at me. A job? He repeated blankly. What job? A real one. Hourly, manual, boring. He laughed again, that harsh, bitter sound. I have a degree, Mom. I've been running my own business for years. You can't just... You tried to burn my house down, I said, my voice suddenly sharp as glass. You've already proven you can't be trusted with freedom and choices. From here on out, you get structure, you get supervision, you get to live like the people you've been talking down to your whole life. He looked away. I won't let you control my life, he muttered. You already handed your life over to loan sharks and idiots with big promises. I'm offering you something else, a way out that doesn't end with you in a ditch or a cell. He flinched again. What kind of job? He asked, voice small. I let the question hang between us for a moment. Then I said, There's an opening at the assisted living facility down the road from me. They need a janitor. Night shifts, weekends, cleaning bathrooms, mopping floors, taking out trash. It pays modestly, but it's steady. And there's nothing like scrubbing someone else's mess at 2 a.m. to remind you that you're not the center of the universe. He stared at me like I'd suggested he donate a kidney with no anesthesia. You want me to be a janitor? He whispered. Yes, I said. You start at the bottom. You learn what work feels like when nobody cares how charming you are. And every paycheck goes through me until your debts are paid back. He let out a strangled sound. That'll take forever, I said. Then you'll be employed for a long time. He got up and started pacing, his hands in his hair. This is insane. You're trying to ruin my life. No, I said. You already did that. I'm trying to give you a chance to build a new one on something other than lies and shortcuts. He stopped, turned to me, eyes blazing. And if I say no, he demanded, if I tell you to mind your own business and walk out that door, then I walk into the police station, I said calmly, and I tell them everything. I give them Jeff Swaim. I give them my statement. I show them the picture of you in that cap, and I let the system do what it does. We stood there, mother and son, staring each other down. He'd gotten taller than me at 14. I used to joke that I'd look up at him and still see the little boy who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. Now I looked up at him and saw a man standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to step back or jump. You'd really do it, he said. There was a kind of wonder in his voice. You'd really send your own son to jail. If my choice is between letting you think you can get away with attempted arson and hoping the law scares you straight, I said, yes. The silence stretched out. He broke first. His shoulders sagged, his face crumpled in a way I hadn't seen since he was 12, and his dog got hit by a car. I don't want to go to jail, he whispered. Then don't, I said. Take the job. He sank back down onto the couch like someone had yanked his strings. Okay, he said dully. Okay, I'll do it. Relief washed through me so hard I had to grip the arm of the chair. I'm not doing this because I hate you, I said quietly. I'm doing this because I love you.
And because you tried to set my life on fire, and I refused to let you walk away thinking that's just another bad decision you can spin your way out of." He covered his face with his hands again. "When do I start?" he muttered. "Tomorrow," I said. "I already called them." He looked up startled. "You what?" "I've known you for 38 years, Michael," I said. "Once I decided what I wanted, I made sure the opportunity would be there if you took it." He shook his head, a humorless little huff leaving his mouth. "You're scary, you know that," he said. "Good," I said. "Maybe you'll remember that the next time some idiot with a scheme tells you there's an easy way out." The assisted living facility was 4 minutes from my house. I'd driven by it 1,000 times. A low, beige building with a circular driveway and a fountain that never seemed to be fully turned on. The next evening, I drove there and parked. Michael was already outside, standing by the employee entrance. He wore black work pants and a plain navy t-shirt. No cap, no fake polo. He looked smaller in those clothes somehow. Less like a man who thought the world owed him a favor, and more like someone who'd realized the world didn't know his name. "You came," I said. "Gee, Mom," he said, "thanks for the vote of confidence." His attempt at sarcasm didn't have any teeth left. We went inside. I'd already spoken to the manager, a woman named Carla with a no-nonsense haircut and the kind of brisk kindness you only see in people who have cleaned up more bodily fluids than they can count. "I don't need his resume," she'd told me on the phone. "I need someone who shows up, does the work, and doesn't scare my residents. If he can do that, we're fine. If he can't, he's gone." Now she sized Michael up in person, eyes sharp. "You ever mopped a floor?" she asked. "Yes," he lied. She raised an eyebrow. "Uh-huh. Well, you'll learn," she said. "You miss a corner, some old guy's gonna slip and break a hip. So maybe take it seriously." He nodded mutely. She ran through the basics: schedule, duties, break room rules. I watched my son get oriented to a job where nobody cared that he used to speak at investor lunches. Nobody cared about his degree. Nobody cared about his potential. They cared whether he knew how to use a mop bucket without flooding a hallway. As we left the office, we passed a bulletin board. On it was a flyer. Part-time grounds help wanted. Light maintenance, outdoor work. Inquire at front desk. An idea sparked. 3 weeks later, Jeff had a job. It took some doing. He needed an ID. He needed a mailing address. He needed a set of clothes that didn't scream underbridge. I helped him. I took him to the DMV, where we stood in line for an hour while he shifted his weight from foot to foot and muttered about how much he'd forgotten how much he hated waiting rooms.
I bought him a set of work pants and a button-down shirt at Goodwill. I sat next to him on a bench with my phone hotspot turned on while he filled out an online application, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. When the assisted living facility called him in, I drove him there myself. Carla looked at me like she knew exactly what I was doing and had decided to let me do it anyway. "Grounds help?" she said, looking Jeff up and down. "You ever used a leaf blower?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. "And a lawnmower, and a rake, and a shovel, and—" He trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've done a lot of things." She studied him for a second, then nodded. "We start you part-time," she said. "You show up, you get more hours. You disappear, you're gone. Clear?" "Yes, ma'am." That was that. Twice a week at first, then more, Jeff came to work at the same place my son scrubbed toilets and emptied trash cans. They didn't work the same shift, at least not at first. Jeff was mostly daytime, Michael mostly nights. But over time, their paths crossed. The first time I knew it had happened was when Michael called me. "Mom?" he said. "Yes?" "You know that homeless guy you used to give $1 to?" I hesitated. "Yes. He works here now." "I know," I said. You set that up, didn't you? Yes, I said. There was a long silence on the line. Did you tell him? Michael asked finally. Tell him what exactly? That, that, what I did. No, I said. I didn't have to. He figured out on his own what almost happened. He doesn't need the details. He knows enough to know you're getting the second chance a lot of people never get. Another silence. He's a hard worker, Michael said grudgingly. They like him. They like people who do their jobs, I said. It's not complicated. I know, he muttered. I could picture him, leaning against a wall in the break room, phone pressed to his ear, smelling like bleach and sweat instead of expensive cologne. Mom, he said. Yes? How long are you gonna, hold this over me? I thought about it. Until I'm sure you're more afraid of becoming the man who tried to burn your mother's house down than you are of disappointing me. And maybe a little longer, to be safe. He laughed, a real one this time. It was small, but it was there. I guess that's fair, he said. Revenge is a funny word. When I used to read those revenge stories online, yes, I read them. I'm 60, not dead. I'd always picture dramatic moments. Public humiliation, people getting fired on the spot, someone being escorted out of an office with their little cardboard box. But real revenge, if you want to call it that, doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it looks like this. Your son, who thought he was too good to work for anyone, putting on steel-toed shoes every day and punching a clock. Your son who used to brag about his freedom, learning what it feels like to have someone like Carla tell him he missed a spot on the baseboards and watch him go back and scrub it. Your son who once tried to burn your life down to pay off his debts, using his second paycheck to make an actual payment, small but real, towards what he owes those not patient people. Sometimes revenge looks like sitting in a quiet living room, listening to your son admit he needs help. I went to that meeting, he said one night, months later. The gamblers group. You were right. It's not just about cards or betting. It's about the rush, the risk. I was addicted to the idea of beating the system. And the system beat me, almost took you with it. He looked at me, eyes shining. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. Not the oops, I messed up kind of sorry. The I see the scope of what I almost did kind. For a long time after the fire, I couldn't hug him. I couldn't stand the smell of smoke on his clothes after work, the way it reminded me of that morning. But that night, I got up from my chair and went over to the couch. I put my hand on his shoulder. He turned, surprised. I hugged him. He hugged me back like a drowning man clinging to a life preserver. I can't promise I'll ever forget, I murmured into his shoulder. But I'm trying to forgive. I'll earn it, he said into my hair. We both knew that was going to be a long process. As for Jeff, his life changed too. Not overnight. This isn't a movie. He still struggled. Old habits tug at you like a riptide. There were days I'd drive past the park and see the old shape of him under the bridge, shoulders hunched, and my heart would twist. But he kept showing up to work. The paychecks were small, but they were regular. He got a room at a cheap motel at first. Then, after 6 months, he moved into a shared house with 2 other guys from the program Carla told him about. I drove him to Walmart once and watched him buy a set of sheets, a pillow, and a lamp. You know you're really living somewhere when you buy a lamp, he told me, half joking, half awed. He saved up, bought a used bike, started packing his own lunches instead of buying snacks from the vending machine. One day, about a year after the fire, we sat on a bench behind the facility on his break. He looked different. Hair trimmed, beard neat, still lines on his face, still that wary look people get when they've lived rough, but there was something else now too. A steadiness. You know, ma'am, he said, I still think about that morning. If I'd decided to sleep in, if I hadn't recognized your son, if I'd just told myself it was none of my business, I'd probably be dead, I said matter-of-factly. He winced. I try not to think about that part, he said. I do, I said. Every day. And every day, I'm grateful you didn't mind your own business. He picked at the label on his water bottle. Nobody ever listened to me before, he said. Not like that. You didn't just nod and walk away. You believed me enough to do something. That was new. Sometimes the people everyone ignores are the ones seeing the most clearly, I said. I learned that a long time ago. He smiled. Michael's doing better, he said. You know that, right? I know, I said. He complains about the work less. He still sucks at mopping, Jeff said, grinning, but he tries. We both laughed. The fountain burbled half-heartedly nearby. A couple of residents shuffled along the walkway with their walkers, deep in conversation about bingo. Life went on. I never did put my house up as collateral. In fact, I went further in the opposite direction. I met with a lawyer, put the house in a trust with specific conditions. If I died, it wouldn't go straight to Michael. It would go into a fund for my future grandkids' education, and a portion would go to charity. One of the charities was the shelter that had kept a bunk for Jeff on cold nights. When I told Michael what I'd done, he nodded. I figured, he said. I mean, I hoped, but yeah, that makes sense. Aren't you angry? I asked. He shook his head. No, he said quietly. I don't deserve the house. Not after what I did. And honestly, it's kind of a relief knowing I can't mess it up. That was the moment I knew something had truly shifted. Not a miracle. He didn't turn into a saint overnight. He still got frustrated. He still had days where he called me and said, I hate this, meaning the mop, the bleach, the long hours. But he stayed. He didn't run to the next easy fix. He learned the hard way that sometimes the only way out is through. Every morning, I still start my day with the mirror. Still here, I tell myself. Still standing. The front door was replaced. New wood, fresh paint. The insurance company asked questions, the fire department did its report, and I answered truthfully, but carefully. I didn't lie, I just didn't push for charges. They labeled it suspicious but unresolved. Sometimes that bothers me. Then I remember my son pulling into my driveway after a night shift, eyes tired but clear, and I let it go. I still walk in the park. My hip and knee still complain, but they've made peace with the fact I'm not giving up on them. I still pass under the bridge. Jeff isn't there anymore. Sometimes there's someone else, a young woman with everything she owns in a backpack, an older man with a sign about being a veteran. I don't just hand out dollars now. Sometimes I sit. I talk. I ask their names. I can't fix everything, but I know better than anybody that sometimes a stranger stopping to listen can shift your entire life a few inches in the right direction. One morning, as I looped back toward the bridge, I saw someone standing in my old spot. Michael. He had his work pants on, t-shirt, a travel mug in his hand. What are you doing here? I asked. He shrugged, a little sheepish. I had the day off. Thought you'd see what your famous walk is like. I snorted. My famous walk is just me and my joints having an argument. We walked together. As we approached the bridge, I saw Jeff's replacement for the morning. A young guy, maybe late 20s, sitting cross-legged, back against the concrete, eyes closed. Michael hesitated. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and took out $1. He walked over and held it out. Here, he said. The man opened his eyes, looked at the dollar, then at Michael. Thanks, he said cautiously. Michael smiled, that same smile Jeff had once called nice. No problem, he said. What's your name? I watched. My son sat down next to a man the world had decided was disposable and started a conversation about nothing and about everything, about the weather, about the town, about the coffee shop with the blue umbrellas. He didn't preach, he didn't judge, he just talked. I stood a few feet away, listening to the murmur of their voices under the bridge. I thought about fire, about how it destroys, yes, but also about how sometimes when something burns, what grows back afterward is stronger. Not always, not for everyone, but for us, for now, it had. When Michael caught up to me, I nudged him with my elbow. "Trying to steal my tradition?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just paying forward $1, he said. "Somebody did that for me once." We walked on. The wind chimes on my porch sang faintly in the distance, carried by the breeze. My house, my home, stood solid and quiet, waiting for me. Nobody was taking it from me. Not the banks, not some opportunity, not even my own son. If revenge means anything in my story, it's this. The boy who tried to profit from my ashes now spends his days cleaning up other people's messes, rebuilding his life one shift at a time. The man the world wrote off as trash helped save my life and got a second chance of his own. And me? I'm still here, still walking, still looking myself in the eye every morning and saying, "You did not break, and you never will."
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.